This heartbreaking photo shows Chinese kidnapping victim Yang Niuhua learning that both of her parents had died years earlier after spending decades searching for her following her abduction as a child. Yang was kidnapped at just 5 years old in Guizhou, China in the 1990s and trafficked far from her hometown, only discovering 26 years later that her devastated father had become an alcoholic and died just 2 years after she vanished, while her mother later died as a result of severe depression and grief, never knowing her daughter was still alive. Years later, Yu's relentless pursuit of justice helped track down her kidnapper Yu Huang, a trafficker linked to at least 17 abducted children, ultimately leading to Yu's conviction and death sentence. In Manila, there are long-standing reports of people living in the city's drainage tunnels, often called the Mole People. These communities are made up of homeless families, runaway kids, and people avoiding police or poverty on the surface. Outreach workers have found makeshift shelters built along the concrete wall, children with severe light sensitivity from spending so much time underground, and tunnels where the air is thick with sewage and rats. During heavy rains, flash floods run through the system without warning, and entire encampments have been washed out, with bodies sometimes recovered blocks away. Here's a rare look at what a camel's toe actually looks like. Unlike most hoofed animals, camels have two toes connected by a large flexible pad that spreads out under their weight. This unique adaptation helps distribute pressure across soft sand, preventing the animal from sinking as it crosses the desert. This might sound impossible at first glance, but every single tile in this pattern is actually identical. The illusion is created by the way the tiles are rotated and arranged, tricking the brain into seeing different shapes, curves, and pathways, even though only one tile design is repeated over and over across the entire surface. Here's an incredible photo of what happens when a solar eclipse shines through the tiny gaps between a tree's leaves. Each small opening acts like a natural pinhole camera, projecting an image of the sun onto the ground below. Because the moon is partially blocking the sun, every projection takes on the same crescent shape instead of appearing as a normal circle of light. The result is thousands of miniature eclipses scattered across the pavement, all changing shape in real time as the solar eclipse progresses. This man made a vow to never sit down or lie flat for 12 years in an effort to grow closer to God. To maintain the vow, he sleeps while standing using suspended supports like the one seen here. Years of continuous standing have reportedly left his legs severely swollen, with damaged veins, chronic fluid buildup, thick blackened skin, and permanent deformities caused by constantly fighting gravity. But despite the excruciating pain and physical deterioration, he's continued the practice as an act of extreme religious devotion. A 41-year-old man with advanced HIV developed mysterious tumors that didn't match any known human cancer. Doctors later discovered that the growths were actually cancer cells from a tapeworm living inside his body, the first known case of cancer spreading from a parasite into a human. Here's a clip showing the terrifying teeth of a boa constrictor. While boas kill their prey with constriction rather than venom, their mouths are lined with dozens of long razor-sharp teeth that curve backwards like hooks. These teeth are designed to grab and hold struggling animals, making it nearly impossible for prey to pull free once the snake has bitten down. Unlike humans, boas also continuously replace their teeth throughout their lives, ensuring that they always have a fresh set ready for hunting. That is horrifying. This heartbreaking clip from China shows the moment a little girl watched her dad sell her beloved pet to a dog meat buyer. Video shows the child sobbing as she desperately held onto the dog's chain and even tried to return the money from the sale in a last attempt to stop it. Despite her efforts, the buyer took the dog away as her dad simply laughed it off. In some parts of China, dogs have been historically sold into the dog meat trade, though the practice has become increasingly controversial and less common in recent years. The footage quickly went viral across Chinese social media, with many viewers expressing outrage and sympathy for the young girl. Thai Buddhist monk Luang Pho Dang died while meditating in 1973 at the age of 79. Following his wishes, his body was placed in a glass coffin at a temple on the Thai island of Koh Samui rather than being cremated. More than 50 years later, the mummified corpse remains remarkably preserved, though time eventually caused the eyes to deteriorate and collapse. Temple caretakers later placed sunglasses over the empty eye sockets so that his appearance would not frighten small children visiting the temple. The monk's mummified body can still be viewed today, seated upright in the same meditation position, making it one of the world's most unusual and unsettling religious displays. A family celebration of the New York Knicks' first NBA championship in 53 years ended in tragedy after neighbors reportedly mistook the sound of cheering for a woman screaming in distress and called 911. When LAPD officers arrived at the Los Angeles apartment, they encountered Jameson, a 2-year-old golden retriever, St. Bernard, and poodle mix wearing a Knicks jersey. Police claim the dog charged at an officer, while the family insists the dog was friendly and never would have posed a threat. An officer then fatally shot Jameson outside the home just 10 minutes after the championship victory. Video of his owner crying over his body quickly spread across social media, sparking widespread outrage and demands for the release of the police body cam footage. The neighbor who made the 911 call later said they felt terrible about what had happened and had genuinely believed that someone inside was in actual danger. A fundraiser launched to help pay for Jameson's cremation and seek justice for the family has already raised more than $125,000 as the shooting remains under investigation. This was the incredible moment thousands of soccer fans turned an entire city blood red. After one of Algeria's biggest soccer clubs celebrated a major victory, supporters coordinated online and agreed to ignite flares at the exact same time across Algiers. Within seconds, thousands of red lights erupted across the skyline, creating a scene that looked more like a war zone than a sports celebration. The display was so extreme that videos of it later spread online as supposed missile attacks. In reality, it was a massive fan-organized celebration that transformed the night sky into one of the most surreal sports scenes ever captured on camera. Here's some amazing footage of the deepest fish ever captured on camera. Scientists filmed these snailfish more than 5 miles beneath the ocean's surface, making it one of the deepest vertebrates ever recorded alive. At that depth, the pressure exceeds 800 times the air pressure at sea level, enough to instantly turn an unprotected human into mush. For decades, many researchers doubted that fish could survive so far down, yet this strange translucent creature spends its entire life in an environment so extreme that almost nothing else on Earth can survive there. Former child star Devet Chase became famous in the early 2000s for voicing Chihiro in Spirited Away and Lilo in Lilo and Stitch, while also terrifying audiences as Samara in The Ring. She quickly became one of Hollywood's most recognizable young actors, appearing in major films and television shows before largely disappearing from the spotlight. According to recent reports, she spent years struggling with personal problems, financial instability, and declining health. Friends claimed she became increasingly isolated, while reports alleged she'd been living in poverty and even spending time in Los Angeles' Skid Row area in the months before her death. Her boyfriend later said she'd been suffering from severe malnutrition before being hospitalized with meningitis and multiple serious blood infections. The actress reportedly weighed less than 80 pounds by the time she was hospitalized. The infections reportedly progressed to sepsis, causing multiple organ failure, and Chase died on June 16, 2026 at just 35 years old. The crimes of Gary Heidnik were so horrific they inspired the character Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs. In 1986, Gary turned his Philadelphia home into a dungeon of unspeakable horrors. He abducted 6 women, chaining them in his basement pit where they endured beatings, sexual assault, starvation, and even being forced to torture each other. 2 women were killed during the ordeal, and in one of the most grotesque acts, Heidnik dismembered a victim, ground up parts of her body, and fed it to the other prisoners. While he carried out these atrocities below ground, he held church services upstairs as if nothing were wrong. Heidnik's twisted plan, according to his lawyer, was to impregnate multiple women in hopes of creating what he called a perfect race. His crimes came to light in 1987 when one captive escaped and alerted police. Heidnik was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection in 1999, becoming the last person ever put to death in the state of Pennsylvania. In 2021, escapologist Jonathan Goodwin attempted one of the most dangerous stunts ever filmed for America's Got Talent Extreme, but it went catastrophically wrong. Suspended in a straitjacket between 2 swinging cars rigged to explode, the timing malfunctioned and the vehicles slammed together with him still in between before he plummeted more than 30 feet to the ground. The impact severed his spinal cord, shattered both legs and shoulder blades, destroyed a kidney, and left him permanently paralyzed. He was airlifted from the set in critical condition, underwent multiple surgeries, and spent months hospitalized before being discharged in early 2022. Now confined to a wheelchair for life, Goodwin has described the incident as a miracle of survival. The next year, Goodwin filed a lawsuit against NBC Universal and others, accusing them of negligence, inadequate safety protocols, and a production that valued spectacle over human life. The filing claims the stunt was rushed, chaotic, and staffed by a team that lacked the necessary expertise, and that Goodwin will be wheelchair-bound for the rest of his life because of it. In May of 2021, 6-year-old Aiden Leos was riding to kindergarten in his booster seat on a California freeway when his mom flipped off a driver who cut her off. Moments later, the passenger pulled out a gun and fired through their trunk, striking Aiden in the back. His final words were, "Mommy, my tummy hurts," before he collapsed bleeding in his mother's arms. He died minutes later, while the shooter, Marcus Aris, was sentenced to 40 years to life in prison. A gambling man from Pakistan was so desperate when he ran out of money to wager, so in a twisted move, he put his own wife on the line. When he lost, the winner claimed his prize by raping her, even recording the assault to blackmail her into silence. Basketball YouTuber Tristan Jass discovered he had a tumor in his brain after suffering a seizure in 2019. The seizure occurred during a period of extreme sleep deprivation, but doctors later found an abnormal growth in his right temporal lobe that had likely been there for years. For 6 years, the tumor was monitored through annual MRI scans before doctors noticed concerning changes and decided it needed to be removed. After undergoing brain surgery in 2025, pathology results showed the growth was a low-grade glioma, a slow-growing form of brain cancer. Jass later revealed the surgery was successful and doctors believed they had removed the entire tumor. In 2003, 20-year-old British skydiver Stephen Hilder died during a 3-person formation jump in England after both his main parachute and emergency reserve failed to open. Investigators discovered that the cords on both parachutes had been deliberately cut with expert precision. Despite the evidence of highly skilled tampering, investigators could never determine whether someone had murdered Hilder or whether he had sabotaged his own equipment before the jump. Trailer Park Boys star Mike Smith, best known as the harmless wide-eyed Bubbles, has been charged with sexual assault in Nova Scotia for an incident that allegedly happened back in 2017, a case that stayed buried for nearly 8 years before finally surfacing in court. The identity of the victim is under a strict publication ban, but Smith is now legally barred from contacting them or going anywhere near their work, home, or school. The charge has forced him to step away from the Trailer Park Boys production company, tainting the wholesome persona millions have associated with him. Deep inside a sulfur-filled cave on the Albania-Greece border, scientists have uncovered the largest spiderweb ever recorded, an enormous 106-meter sheet stretched across the cavern's walls. Hundreds of thousands of spiders from 2 normally rival species have formed a massive cooperative colony, a terrifying behavior never before seen in spiders. The cave's toxic sunless environment created a self-sustaining ecosystem powered by sulfur-eating microbes which attracted swarms of insects, which in turn supplied this spider megacity with endless food. The web is so dense and vast it looks like the cave is wrapped in ghostly white fabric, proof that life can evolve into something terrifyingly efficient when pushed into extreme conditions. On May 2nd, 2001, John Battaglia lured his 2 daughters, 9-year-old Faith and 6-year-old Liberty, to his Dallas apartment for what was supposed to be a routine visitation, even though he was already wanted for violating probation after threatening their mother, Mary Jean Pearl. Furious that she had reported him, he called her on speaker and forced the girls to the phone so that she could hear everything. As Mary Jean begged them to run away, Faith's last words were, "No, Daddy, please don't do it," followed by the sound of multiple gunshots. Battaglia shot both girls with a .45 caliber revolver, then calmly left the apartment, went to a tattoo shop, and had 2 roses inked on his arm to honor them. When police arrived, the girls were found posed and surrounded by their toys. Battaglia showed no remorse at trial, smirked at the prosecutors, and even blew kisses at spectators in the courtroom. He was sentenced to death and eventually executed in 2018, calling himself the happiest man alive moments before the injection. Chef Anthony Bourdain often described his life as something he wasn't supposed to still have. In the 1980s, while working as a chef in New York City, he fell into a severe heroin addiction, using daily, stealing from coworkers, and living in a constant state of physical and mental collapse. He later admitted he fully expected to die young during that period and was surprised he survived it at all. When fame arrived years later after writing Kitchen Confidential, Bourdain said that sudden success in many ways was more dangerous than addiction, giving him money, access, and non-stop travel that nearly pulled him back into self-destructive behavior. While filming No Reservations and Parts Unknown, he spent years moving through regions marked by executions, cartel violence, and war, repeatedly confronting death up close until he said it began to feel disturbingly ordinary. Even as his career thrived, Bourdain acknowledged that depression never truly left him, describing it as something that doesn't disappear but waits in the shadows, a statement that would take on a far darker meaning after he took his own life in 2018. During World War II, Nazi SS units carried out one of the regime's most disturbing programs, the mass kidnapping of up to 200,000 Polish children for forced Germanization. After being taken from their families, the children were sent to SS-run children's education camps, where they were subjected to horrific racial selection exams. SS doctors measured their skulls, noses, eye colors, and body proportions, trying to determine whether each child looked Aryan enough to be turned into a German. If a child passed the test, they were renamed, stripped of their identity, and adopted into German families as if they'd never been Polish at all. But if they failed, their fate was much darker. Many were transported to concentration camps, where countless children died from starvation, disease, abuse, or execution. Only an estimated 10 to 15% of the kidnapped children were ever found and returned to Poland after the war. At the Nuremberg trials, the Allies confirmed the program a form of genocide, the deliberate attempt to erase an entire population by stealing and remaking their children. Amid the darkest day in modern history, these are the miracles of 9/11 that still leave people speechless. After nearly 27 hours buried under debris, Janelle Guzman McMillan, an office worker in the North Tower, was the last person rescued alive from Ground Zero. Pinned under concrete with only a single hand free, she said she felt someone holding it and telling her that she would be okay. When rescuers finally pulled her out, they all swore that none of them had touched her hand. In the North Tower's Stairwell B, a group of 16 firefighters, a police officer, and a civilian survived the entire collapse, entombed in a concrete pocket while everything around them was pulverized. They were dug out hours later still alive in what rescuers called a miracle. One survivor, Stanley Premnath, was literally looking at the nose of Flight 175 as it struck the South Tower. His office was completely shredded, but he survived by diving under his desk. He was later pulled from the rubble by another worker, both escaping down the stairwell before the building collapsed. A Port Authority worker named Pasquale Buzelli was on the 22nd floor of the North Tower when it suddenly collapsed beneath him. But instead of being crushed, he was carried down with the debris, riding it like a wave. He woke up hours later on top of a pile of rubble with only a broken ankle, later nicknamed the 9/11 Surfer. A guide dog named Roselle led a group of people, including her blind owner, down 78 flights of stairs before the North Tower collapsed. She stopped only once to give kisses to a woman who was having a panic attack. Here are some morbid facts about Halloween. At his 2011 Halloween party, Neil Patrick Harris served a cake designed to look like the rotting corpse of Amy Winehouse, complete with a mangled face, matted hair, blood-red frosting, a cigarette hanging from its mouth, and a tag reading, "The Corpse of Amy Winehouse." The photo resurfaced years later and drew massive backlash, especially since Winehouse had died from alcohol poisoning just 3 months before the party. Harris later apologized, calling it a regrettable choice. Many animal shelters refuse to let black cats be adopted around Halloween time, fearing they'll be tortured, sacrificed, or used as props in satanic rituals. Legendary illusionist Harry Houdini died on Halloween night in 1926 after his appendix burst, reportedly triggered when a fan punched him to test his strength. Before his death, he promised his wife he'd try to contact her from beyond the grave every Halloween, sparking seances that still continue to this day. In 1990, 32-year-old magician Joe Burris tried to outdo Houdini by being buried alive in a plexiglass coffin under 7 tons of dirt and cement, but the coffin collapsed instantly, crushing him to death on Halloween night, just like his idol. Statistically, Halloween is the deadliest day of the year for child pedestrians by far. Kids are 3 times more likely to be hit by a car while trick-or-treating than any other day of the year. 8-year-old Timothy Bryan died on Halloween night in 1974 after eating cyanide-laced candy given to him by his own father, who hoped to cash in on his life insurance policy. The Candyman case sparked the nationwide panic about poisoned Halloween candy, but it was the only true case of it happening ever recorded. In dozens of states, registered sex offenders are required by law to keep their porch lights off, avoid Halloween decorations, and have no contact with children on Halloween. Some cities even enforce curfews and random compliance checks on Halloween night. On an October night in 1997, students at Cornell University woke up to find a pumpkin impaled on the tip of the 173-foot spire of McGraw Tower. No one saw it placed there, no ropes, cranes, or ladders were ever found, and no one took credit. The pumpkin stayed perched for months, slowly rotting through the winter before being removed in March, an incredible Halloween mystery that remains unsolved to this day. In 2021, 75-year-old cyclist Dave Richards was hit by a drunk driver in Bristol, England, suffering catastrophic injuries that left him with burns across half his face, a shattered pelvis, and the loss of an eye. For years, he avoided mirrors and crowds, haunted by his own face and the looks of strangers. But in 2025, doctors at the Bristol 3D Medical Center gave him something never performed before: a 3D printed facial prosthesis that perfectly matched his skin tone, hair, and eye color. Using detailed scans of his head, they built a custom silicone replacement that restored the face he'd lost. In June of 2010, 7-year-old Kairen Horman proudly posed beside his science fair project on tree frogs at Skyline Elementary School in Portland, Oregon. It would mysteriously end up being the last photo ever taken of him. Moments later, Kairen was seen walking down the hallway toward his classroom and then upright vanished somewhere inside the school building. Despite an immediate search of every classroom, closet, and crawl space, no one ever saw him leave. When he didn't return home that afternoon, police launched one of the largest search efforts in Oregon history, combing the surrounding woods and rivers for months. His stepmother, Terry Horman, was the last person to see him alive but was never charged. 15 years later, the boy who disappeared inside his own school has never been found. Patrice O'Neal was a renowned stand-up comedian known for his sharp, unfiltered style on stage and appearances on Chappelle's Show, Opie and Anthony, and the Comedy Central roasts. He first discovered he had diabetes after a girlfriend told him his urine tasted like birthday cake, prompting him to get tested. The disease slowly wore him down over the years until in October of 2011, he suffered a massive stroke. Just a month later, at 41 years old, he died from complications, with his final television appearance being the roast of Charlie Sheen. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, the heat was so intense it didn't just kill people. It completely warped human remains in ways rarely seen throughout history. In Herculaneum, archaeologists discovered the body of a young man lying face down on a wooden bed whose brain had literally been turned into glass. What you're looking at in this photo is brain tissue that was flash heated to nearly 1,000 degrees before cooling so rapidly it vitrified, leaving behind a shiny glass-like substance. It remains one of the only known cases of a human brain preserved through such a gruesome transformation.